Welcome back to Blank Note, a show where three young and aspiring musicians get to talk to the best in the business and have them answer our biggest questions. I'm your host, Justin Littleton.
I'm Nadia Johnson.
And I'm Terrence Harris. Let's fill in the note.
What's up, guys?
Hey!
What's up, Justin?
Alright, so today's been pretty, I want to say busy. It's been pretty hectic. I've had band practice. I've had so much homework to do, and then I had practice after the practice. So I can't lie, I'm feeling pretty burnt out.
I feel you, man. It's be like that sometimes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm currently on fall break right now, which was definitely needed because college is... Oh, man. So many papers, so many projects, so many exams. Yeah, it'll have you going every day.
Yeah, and we just had midterm exams.
Midterms?
Yes, sir. And we don't even get a fall break. We have to wait till Thanksgiving.
Ooh.
Yikes.
So sorry.
That sucks.
So sorry.
Yeah, thank you. But that's honestly what I wanted to talk about today. Because, I mean, all three of us love to create music, but it's so hard not to get burnt out and to keep feeling creative with so much going on. So I'm just curious, how do you guys do it?
So honestly, for me, when I'm like creating music or DJing or anything really, I have to stop and switch it up a bit. You know what I'm saying? Just like kind of give it my own spin, give it my own taste, and just throw different things in there. Like if I'm making music, just try something new, try like a reggae beat or some Afro hip hop. Like just try to mix things up. What about you, Nadia?
I would say for me, mixing things up is kind of a part of what I like to do as well. I have a lot of passions outside of music and dealing with other forms of art media, whether that be playwriting or kind of like story writing or things of that sort, where it may not always be music related, which kind of helps me as an artist to grow in other areas, but then also not get so exhausted and just doing music, especially since I go to music school for music now, and music is like required for a grade. Right. I gotta perform. Yeah. I gotta constantly do things that are music related. It's really great to be able to step back and work on other projects and my other interests and grow in those areas as well, so that I'm not kind of getting worn out. Sleep is also key.
Honestly, you guys are a lot better than me. I just do what Nadia does at the end and just go to sleep and keep pushing. But what are some tips that you guys have? Just one solid tip to help with burnout.
I'll go first. Honestly, you always have to take time for yourself. I mean, either kind of coming to your own space just to clear your mind, listen to music, and kind of wind down, kind of release stress, gain back some positive energy, maybe even some rest. Like you said, Justin, you sleep a lot. Like, just always take time for yourself. What about you, Nadia?
Kind of going along with that, preserving your yes, which is easier said than done, especially for young artists who really want to, build their resume and seize all those great sounding opportunities. It's easy to say yes to a bunch of things without even thinking about the amount of time and effort that each commitment requires. So I would say really being mindful of where your priorities are, and then seizing opportunities and really saying yes to different commitments based on if they're going to help you get closer to your goal. If not, then maybe now is not the time to do that commitment or do that thing if you already have so much on your plate.
Nadia, you know what's crazy? I actually, in public speaking class, I heard someone say, we were watching a video of this public speaking guy, and he said the best, you're in a good position when you have to constantly say no to opportunities because you have so many lined up.
Yeah. I heard this one speaker use the phrase "preserve your yes," and I was like, oh, "That's so good," because it's like, right. It's easy to just be like, "Yeah, sign me up, I'll do it," and it's like, "Oh wait, honestly, I actually don't have time."
Yeah, you just reminded me of that, and that was like that stuck with me.
Man, with me, it's like completely different. I'm always like saying yes because I know I have to take advantage of what I don't have. Yeah. But if I don't want to do something, or if I'm already having too much, I'm a yes person. So it's a lot harder for me to easily say no to them because I don't want to hurt someone else's feelings.
Yeah.
Especially if they like specifically ask you, like, "Oh, you asking me?"
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Right. You thought of me? I don't want to say no now.
Exactly. This is a question that I actually wanted to ask one of my favorite musicians, Nate Werth, because you can tell that he's busy. He's the living embodiment of busy. He's in Snarky Puppy. He's a core member of Ghost-Note, and he tours, records, and creates with both. So I thought he would be like the perfect person to ask this question, because he, between those as well, you can watch the videos and tell that he's constantly busy moving from instrument to instrument, since he doesn't just play drums, he plays multiple percussion instruments.
Man, this is going to be an amazing podcast. I really love this guy.
Hey, Justin. Good to meet you. Thanks for having me.
It's good to meet you too. Well, let's start off with explaining what it is you do.
Well, I am a percussionist and drummer. And what that is percussion is rhythmical instruments from all over the world. Anything you shake or strike, just these rhythmical textures. And that's what percussion is in my world and what I specialize in. But percussion is also this massive group of instruments. And actually, piano is known as a percussion instrument, although I wouldn't say I'm a professional at the piano. But there's orchestral percussion, and that's where I started. And that's like timpani and marimbas and xylophones and snare drums and big bass drums and everything that you would hear in an orchestral setting. And so that's what I do. I'm a person that shakes and strikes things for a living.
Yes, sir. Because I remember watching my first ever Snarky Puppy video I ever watched was Lingus, I believe. And I remember seeing you, I believe that's with you, over there with all the different percussion instruments. You were playing the congos over there, and then you had a bunch of different other percussion instruments. And I was wondering who that was and what they were doing back when I first watched it. So if anyone is wondering exactly what he does, just go to that Snarky Puppy video. And the man who has all those instruments around him, that is Nate Werth.
Yes, I get that a lot. What is he doing back there? But you know, it makes a lot of sense, because what I do is not for America and the U.S. and sort of Western music and pop music. It's things that people know as like, oh yeah, cowbell or tambourine or congas and things like that are more of the mainstream percussion that you hear in Western music and on the radio and stuff like that. But it's also like so many things that when you hear that sound, you can be like, what is that? Is that the drummer doing that? Is that a sound, you know, from a muted sound from a string instrument or something? But there's all these textures that I use, and I'm constantly getting inspired by new things and finding new things when I'm in different countries that I never knew about, and really diving deep into what that instrument is and what it is normally used for, and what kind of sounds can I get out of it. And then also I sort of like to use anything that makes sound. And that's one of the beautiful things I think about percussion and music is it's merging like this like sort of object and art into music. And because everything is a sound, anything can be percussion. You can take a trumpet and make it a percussion instrument, although it may damage it if I'm not too soft with it. But it's a very cool, fun, I would say I have the funnest instrument to play in the band.
And I heard that you actually went to college for percussion. How did you end up knowing that you wanted to go to college and do percussion for a living?
It's a really great question. You know, I don't know. sometimes I ask that because people ask me, what made you, and I don't think there's a moment where I like did something musically and I had this feeling like a lot of musicians will have that. I think for me, it was just this thing that just attracted me, and I loved to practice. I could feel that evolution in my knowledge and in my musicality, in my performance, in my confidence, in my creativity. All these things happen for music normally at a young age, I would say, is you get so inspired and you just have these moments where there's nothing else around you except for that musical piece you're working on or the music you're listening to or what you're practicing, and just creating from your soul essentially, and it's flowing out into sound waves. I mean, the whole thing just sounds like magic when you think about it. And I think just the element of I get to make the choice, this is me. Once I got beyond reading music, was really attractive for me, and people seemed to like listening to what I did, and I would just get lost in these moments of creativity and songwriting, and so it just felt like the next thing to do is like, well, high school is almost over. What am I going to do? A lot of people are going to college, and maybe for me it was a little easier because my brother, who's 2 years older than me, is also a drummer, and he's a vibraphonist and just overall musician. He plays a lot more instruments than just drums, and so he was going to college for drums and like orchestral percussion. And that seemed like something that seemed really interesting to me. And so I visited him when I was 16, I want to say, in college. And I stayed with him for like 3 or 4 days. And I got to see him perform and meet a lot of his friends. And I saw that the school had all of these sort of other percussion teachers and these master percussionists that were also at the university. And so in addition to this orchestral side, there was a guy from India, and there was a guy from West Africa, and there was a guy, like just a guy from Puerto Rico, and like all over the place. And so for me, that really made it attractive because from a young age, I was exposed to worlds of music. And so, I mean, that's really what would explain me as what I do today is a white kid from Indiana near Chicago that was just exposed to worlds of music, and then also was told that, it's good to learn the tradition, and I'm allowed to play the instrument whatever feels fit for me in my ear. So I could modernize it and play a timpani like a conga. I've never done that, but maybe that would be something I do in the future. But just anything, like I can learn this technique on this instrument, and then I can apply it to this instrument from this country, from the world. So there's that element that I think brought me into wanting to explore percussion deeply and I went to the University of North Texas, and I had all these amazing teachers, Puvalar Sriji, Jose Aponte, Gideon Alawarrier, and then these other teachers also that were there, Mark Ford and Christopher Dean. And they were the main professors that did the orchestral side, but they also did other worlds of percussion, especially Christopher Dean. And so I had these amazing teachers that just led me in the right direction, and it was addictive, and I loved it. So I think pure love and some really good teachers is what got me to where I am today.
So you can really say that all of those people, your brother, all of your teachers, and all of the different cultures around you inspiring you for percussion is what got you motivated to be a percussionist, even while you were in college, knowing that you wanted to be a percussionist, I should say. So they really inspired you and kept you going.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And And, it's fun to answer these questions that come in to make me reflect on my choices in my life. And especially something like music and what attracted me to this industry. And really, I also just kind of did it blindly. I never really thought about career, which sounds irresponsible, but I was just caught up in the love for the instrument and the music. And I just felt like with something that felt that natural, I was bound to find the right lane or the right current to pull me in. And luckily I did, but when I was in college, I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was just focusing on practicing, getting better, seeing music, getting inspired by other musicians, connecting with my peers. I wasn't thinking about, well, how am I going to pay the bills? So that all came later.
Yeah.
And there's lots of ways that I pay the bills.
So when you say you didn't know exactly what you wanted to do in college, but I also remember you saying one time that if you weren't a musician, you actually wanted to be a chef. So how did you sort of figure that out while you were in college? So did you just have an epiphany one day, or did you just continue down the path that you were already on?
Well, when you're in college and you're focusing on music, and I was probably practicing on a light day 4-5 hours, and most days I was practicing 6 to 8 hours, and so there's no time for a job. And so I would just find out. The first job I got was I was a janitor at the student union in college, because that could work around my schedule. The hours were flexible, and a lot of times you could work like a night shift when no one's there and the union's closed, and it was just like sweeping and mopping the floors and stuff. And so I could have my headphones on, be listening and getting inspired by this music, or learning a piece that I was going to learn on the page, but I was listening to it first, so that when I was learning the notes off the page, it was already familiar in my ear. And so like little things like this, I was utilizing my time. And so I found jobs like that at first, and I would teach private lessons at like the local middle school and things like that, like beginner percussionist. And I did a lot of that. And the chef thing came because I was doing music. I was eating music. I was sleeping music. I was breathing music. And then I was trying to make my job music, with teaching, but it was a different lane of music, and it's a different muscle, teaching someone else how to do something proficiently, and there's a lot of responsibility there. And I just started to feel burnt out, like with teaching at that stage of my life. And so that's when I was like, well, what can I do that I like, so that when I'm not practicing music, I can give myself a breath and step away from the music to let my brain, download and process everything that I was just doing. And so I was like, well, I love food. And so I just went and looked for hiring signs, and I told a little fib, like, oh, I went to cooking school. And the head chef was like, well, you're in luck because someone quit today. And so in the back, there's a 50-pound bag of potatoes, and I need it sliced into 1/4-inch cubes. I need it within the hour. So that was maybe a year I did that. And then Snarky Puppy started touring a lot more. So I stopped that job.
And speaking of Snarky Puppy, what led you to starting Snarky Puppy? What led you to wanting to know you wanted to be in a band?
Yeah, so Snarky Puppy is a really beautiful, natural development of a bunch of musicians that just had the love for the music, and the music we were all inspired by and listening to was like very much like this fusion of styles, and with a large fusion of world music. So like that was right up my alley. And I had been searching in college for a group of musicians to do something like that with. And so I was in the basketball pep band, essentially, and we would play at the basketball games. And so in between, during timeouts, we'd play, and there was a rhythm section. It was my brother on drums, me on percussion, Mike League on bass, and Chris McQueen on guitar. And then there was a whole horn, pep band horn line, but we were the rhythm section. So a lot of times we would play by ourselves, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters, a lot of funk music, Tower of Power, things that are good for like horns and rhythm section. And so shortly after that, Mike League was like, hey, I'm getting a group of people together to just essentially play through some music. It wasn't like, hey, do you want to join my band? It was mainly like, let's put a band together, because at music schools, what they do a lot of times is they have once a month or maybe twice a semester, they'll have like a professional musician come in with their band or sometimes by themselves. And if they come in by themselves, they like the school to put together a trio or a rhythm section for them to play with. So our jazz school at North Texas would do that. And then they would also showcase like just groups of musicians that would prepare something. And so one of the teachers asked Michael League if he would be interested in that. So Mike put together a group of musicians that he liked playing with. And we played for this teacher. And there was maybe 2 original songs, but it was mainly, if I remember correctly, and it was all covers and stuff. And so this teacher that came in, this amazing musician, is from New Orleans. His name is Johnny Vidakovich. And so after hearing us play, he was like, the band sounds great. When are you guys going to go on tour? Like, this is amazing. Mike just kind of smiled and he's like, I'm planning one right now, and did the thing that you do and called around. And he said, well, if you make it down to New Orleans, you have a gig. And he's like, my wife books at this local bar. And so that was our first tour, and we needed a band name. So now, like, just the group of guys and girls that were together playing music, it became a band. And that was the first installment of Snarky Puppy, I think back in 2004 or something like that.
And speaking of, how were those first few years? So from the first tour on until however many years it's been, how was those first few years as a band? Any like hiccups or?
I mean, are you kidding me? Like this, when you're going on your first tour, nothing can go wrong, right? Nothing can go wrong for the first tour. You're excited. You're like, I'm with my friends. We're going to play music. This is going to be fun. I'm so excited. It's like I'm starting something that I've always wanted to do. And so we had that energy. And so on the other side of it, it was, well, where are we going to sleep tonight? We can't afford a hotel. Yeah, we can't afford a hotel. What are we going to do? I mean, we got to use all the money that we're getting from this venue to pay for gas to get us to the next town. And so none of us are like thinking about we're making money at the beginning and stuff like that. Like it was very much like, we're going on this. And if we make some money, great. And if we come out alive, even better. And so, it was just, we would ask people that looked like our age and were at the show, and maybe they were musicians, and, hey, you guys having a jam or something? And they'd be like, yeah, come back to the house and jam. And then once we would be at the house, we'd be like, can we crash on your couch? And so we did that, for the first 6 years of the band probably. But we got good at it. And then we started using our network of people that we knew from college around the country, and it became like a plan. And so it wasn't that like sort of wild of just like not having anything logistically planned. Every tour got a little bit better. And when I say little bit, I mean like not really better. It's like we told ourselves that, but it kind of got to a tolerable point, and then it just stayed in that tolerable point until we started seeing some success. I mean, we would share hotel rooms, we would share beds. It was very common to only have like 2 hotel rooms, and there were 8 of us. And so it would be like 2 people per bed, double rooms, and we'd share the 1 bathroom in the room. And I mean, we just made it work, and we just loved the music. And the moment on stage was what kept us doing that. You have to think like there's 24 hours in a day. You're in the van for 4 to 8 hours. and then you're sound checking and setting up your gear and unloading the trailer. And so there's really only about 90 minutes that you get to do the thing that you love with the people that inspire you at the time the most. And so that's what the band was. And then we just didn't stop. And I think at about year 10, we really started to see some things change. But in year 7, I think we won our first Grammy. So to give you the perspective, like, we won a Grammy and then we got right back in the van pulling the broken trailer and sharing rooms. So it was like very, very much a wake-up call to the condition of the music industry as a whole, I would say. But you know, here we are now selling. I think when we just did South America, we sold 8,000 tickets in Buenos Aires, and you know, like we're playing to huge crowds. We're playing to crowds of 2,500 in Europe to 5,000, I think, in Europe. We're playing these giant festivals. I mean, who would have thought that a group of friends that put together a band, you know, would end up where we are now? I just never. I dreamed of it, but I never really thought it would be as big as it went.
And I can imagine, because you said you won a Grammy. It's normally when you win a Grammy, you would already have all the logistics and stuff put together, but y'all waited until after y'all had the Grammy to really start to get on your act.
The key word, though, that you said there is that we waited. We didn't wait. We essentially, I mean, you have to imagine, like, this band was formed off the backs of people that had no idea what they were doing. We didn't have someone that told us this is how you tour. It was just us, and we rented a van at first from like an Enterprise or something like that, and we were like, oh, but none of these vans have hitches on them, and so we're like, how are we going to pull our gear? Because we need all the benches. We can't take some of the benches out because there's too many of us. And so I was like, let's just take it over to U-Haul and pay for a hitch to be put on the vehicle. And U-Haul did it. Like, no questions asked. They installed the hitch. And then when we returned the vehicle, they were like, there's like a hitch on here. And we were like, it was there when we picked it up. And because this is before they took photos of the vehicle. And so, I mean, there were definitely some things that we had to do to just figure it out. And, you know, we didn't hurt anyone. If anything, like, we increased the value of that, you know, vehicle for free. So, you know, there's no waiting. I mean, we didn't have an agency. We didn't have management. We couldn't pay somebody at the time to do those roles. And we couldn't find anyone that was even interested in us, because for the longest time, only 7 or 10 people would come out to see the show. And so this is like full on exposure of what it took for us to become college kids playing music with each other to like Snarky Puppy. And there were a lot of people that would be in the band for a couple years, and then they'd be like, I'm going on to the next opportunity. And that's completely normal. And so the way the band just sort of kept on going, and there was about 7 of us that through the years sort of stayed with it. And like, those members are still playing with the band today. And, you know, we've collected a lot of amazing musicians on the way up that are also still playing with the band today. And so that's why Snarky Puppy is this collective of something like 20, I don't know how, over 20. I haven't counted, but it's a considerable amount of musicians that Michael pulls from because of the vigorous touring that happens. And a lot of us have other projects and other musical inspirations and things that we want to do in addition to playing with Snarky Puppy.
And I can really feel that, and I can understand the difficulty in, oh, we got to get this, we need to hook this up here. Like when you said you just had to throw a hitch onto the van because you didn't have one. I can understand running around because I'm a drum major and I have to deal with the logistics a lot as well at home. In the marching band, I'm sorry, not at home, but I have to do that too at home, but in the marching band. So I just have a lot going on at home. I have college things, and I just want to know, for reference, how do you avoid getting burnt out when you have all these different projects? You have Ghost-Note, you have Snarky Puppy, you mentioned you were teaching in college, all these different side hustles that you have. How do you centralize yourself and navigate through it without getting burnt out?
Where I've seen success for me, and this is just for me because everyone's different, but I like to find these sort of dances that work with activities. And so if something works for me where I'm like, okay, these 4 days I'm going in on work and I'm putting in 12 to 16 hours so that I can finish the hours I need to put in for that job or that task or that whatever fill in the blank is, that goal. And then I can have that set aside. And then these other times in the week, now I can sprinkle in the smaller amount of time responsibility. So I, up here in my mind, am creating like a schedule. And it's funny because before the iPhone, every gig I had, everything, I didn't have, a lot of my friends had these like calendar books. I didn't have one of those. I just memorized everything. And so I'm still able to do that, but now with the iPhone, I use the iCal. And so I have a calendar for this, I have a calendar for that. And Ghost-Note has, we have a manager, we have a booking agency. And so Snarky Puppy has all those things, and Snarky Puppy has a lot of other things. There's like a business management, and there's like other things. And so there's a large team behind Snarky Puppy. So pretty much when I email a question, I get an answer within 24 hours, and usually less than 6 hours, I'm getting an answer. And so that's very helpful. And then with Ghost-Note, since I am one of the leaders, I have like decision making. And so it makes it very easy to make that puzzle piece fit. So it's just something that you get used to. And, it's part of the industry. If anyone's out there that's listening is interested in becoming a musician or professional musician, it's follow your passion, and it's a cool industry because there's so many parts of it. So you can see success with doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And it takes some of the pressure off for especially those trying to get into performance, and, that which takes maybe a little bit more time than like, getting into teaching or getting into songwriting or music production or engineering, and so I do sort of like a little bit of everything now. Like over the pandemic, I learned and kind of taught myself like very basics of like studio teching and like setting things up and understanding like the DAW and the software with the recording. And then since then, it's like, it begins like this new path of growth. And so I'm always trying to learn and go to people's studios that are great engineers and being a fly on the wall and just watching what they're doing and using my ears and listening. And because beyond like the technical aspect, then it's like for music, then it's like you have to train these guys. So after you learn all the technicalities and understand like why a knob does what it does and what that means for the frequency of sound, then it's like, okay, well, yeah, I can do this, but can you really do it? Because you have to use your ears. And that becomes a whole nother side of, how talented some people are. And so, yeah, I really enjoy it. I get to perform music. I get to write music. I get to record music. I get to help record music. I get to teach music. And so there's all these great things that I'm passionate about now. And I try and make time for every part of that is like my career and my voice as a musician.
Yeah, sort of like weaving different parts of your life into place to make sure one part doesn't overpower the other. You don't get burnt out from overdoing one part. That actually really helped me a lot.
Sometimes, like, every year isn't the same. It's not like this like blueprint schedule that works. Like if one year, let's say like this year we're in right now, Snarky Puppy has released a record end of the year last year. And so this is like sort of like a promotion year, promoting the record, playing the music. So I'm leaning into that, and I'm maybe doing more Snarky Puppy dates this year than I will on another year where there isn't a record being released. And so it's the same thing. Like if there's light years in touring, then I'm really leaning into other parts of my art.
Yeah. Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah.
Whenever you have those years where you have to be constantly creating, when you have those years where you are constantly on tour, how do you stay inspired while creating so much? So you're constantly going and going and going. How do you stay inspired?
I think, what I hear you asking is like, how do I make sure my creative tank isn't depleted? Like what am I doing to fulfill myself? And it's different for everyone. So, but what am I doing? I think that staying connected to the people I love is really important. So while I'm on tour, phone calls, FaceTime is like really important to me, and I'm showing up for that. And there's like a schedule, and if like I'm always making sure that that's like a priority. And so that's one of my high priorities. And then also really sort of allowing myself to feel natural and within the music. And so before tour, I'm prepping and making sure that I know the music, and that, as you've noticed in a lot of these videos where we're playing Snarky Puppy songs, the whole, especially on the last couple records, the whole unit, the whole extended members and all the members of Snarky Puppy are recording at the same time. And so there's a lot of percussion happening. So I got to make sure that, my hands are working, and that I'm thinking about like, okay, in this section, I'm going to play a cowbell pattern. And then in this section, I'm going to play the congas. And so I'm orchestrating percussion in my mind when I'm like going over the songs. And I'm also finding like those hot spots. And then also the thing that sort of slips by a lot of musicians and creatives is like the self solitude time, because when you're on tour, there's no solitude. Like it's, unless you're on like, at this point in Snarky Puppy, we can get days of solitude with days off. We get to get off the bus and everyone gets their own hotel room. And so on those days, you tend to spend that day alone or catching up on exercise, going to a gym. Some people like to go on hikes and do stuff outside and connect with nature. And so whatever that other thing is, some people like to read. I like to do all of those things, and I like to go find like a beautiful place and maybe meditate for 20 or 30 minutes. Or once in a tour, I like to find like a spa with like lots of saunas and maybe like a cold ice bath where I can like go in a sauna and then go in an ice bath. And that's really good for my body because percussion is very physical. And so these kind of things I'm doing while I'm out on tour to take care of myself so that when I come home, I'm not just burnt out. In the past, when we were on those tours where I was describing to you, where I was sleeping on floors and in the van, and I mean, I would come back and sleep for like 2 days straight. And when you're young, you're able to do those kind of things, I would say. And it's the challenge is there, to really keep your inspiration tank full. But it's really, I think it's about health, and it's about connection, and it's about showing up for your art and your craft. And if you got those three things, then you add some good food, some really great food every once in a while. You add some friendship, and you're starting to look pretty good at keeping your inspiration tank full. And as long as you have those outlets, I think that's what really helps me.
As we begin to wrap up, I just want to ask you, what would you carry from your past? So like, what skills from the past that you've experienced, what would you say stuck with you up to now?
I think my work ethic is probably pretty. I would say it's somewhat strong, and that I think a lot of people that are doing like the independent route, and just sort of not taking no for an answer with their career and their craft. There's a lot of walls that some of us will hit, when you're trying to do something where there is no application or interview, to do the thing that you're trying to do. And there's a lot of hurdles that you have to overcome in most cases. And a lot of those hurdles are kind of like within yourself. And I think the more that I do this music thing and this art thing, it's really about having to expose and sort of take the layers off of myself and really learning, about what works and about like those times where I might be feeling drained, like you were saying, or I might be feeling just purely exhausted or doubtful or there's a lot of things that will creep in and distract you from like what really matters. And that's what my experience is. And so things I take from the past are sometimes it's about, this time when I was really struggling and what was I doing? What was I focusing on? What was I letting distract me when I was struggling? And then I'll remember those moments, and it'll help me stay away from that or look out for, hey, that's a trap. If my mind goes that way and I allow myself to become hyper-focused on something that might make me feel uninspired or might make me feel worried, I choose to look at that way of doing something and nod and be like, oh, I see you. And I know how that plays out. And this kind of attitude works for me, where I'm not hiding from these emotions or this sort of inspiration or, any artist, you have to your gold and your tools are your worst experiences mainly, and your greatest experiences or dreams. It's like combining those two things and trying to do something with it. And so the further you can mine into yourself, and there's a lot of inspiration there, and the self-growth thing is something that's very also high on my list. And so experiences of certain mentors of mine and their way of life and their values and their work ethic has really stuck with me over the years. And so I would say the work ethic thing, mixed with all of that other stuff that I threw in that bucket, because, it's hard to go through a career that you make for yourself without giving it your all. And you're the one that sets that bar. Is this your all? Or is this your all? Is this your all? So I try and make mine high, but I know others that have made it astronomical and it's worked, and some it hasn't, because it's like, so you have to find what works for you. Like, where do you set the bar to keep that desire to keep raising the bar and to keep striving for that? And I think, that type of work ethic is what's really stuck with me.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to share to the younger generation, like myself, who's thinking about getting into music as a career or just as a hobby?
Yes. Of course there is. I love connecting with the younger generation. That's one of my biggest places for inspiration, is listening to all of you younger musicians out there, and what inspires you and the unique sounds and music that you're drawn to, and different ways of doing things, you know, and reinventing the wheel another time. Like I absolutely love it. And so I would just say, you know, really connect with your peers, really be a part of your musical community, you know, whatever that means. If it means being the person that always shows up and you just like to listen, if it means the person that always shows up and brings the drum set and loves to have everyone play it, or whatever it is, you know, the person that puts together the jam session and makes sure that everyone's invited, you know, just being a part of the music community immediately around you. And that in itself right there is the first step in the right direction, you know, and then also just, you know, not forgetting to utilize the amount of wealth and knowledge of musicians that have come before you and really listening in and not just going like one generation before you or two generations, but, you know, really going further and further and further and until you find something that like you really love, and then, you know, really dive deep into that and then go further and keep on doing it. And it's this like totem pole of you're just stacking all this knowledge and all this inspiration. And that's something that really works for me. And then sharing that knowledge that inspires you with your peers. And so you're doing everything, you know, in that way. Like you're learning, you're growing, you're connecting, you're creating, you know, you're creating a new experience from something that is maybe a old tradition. And that I think is beautiful in a lot of the music that I hear young artists creating today. And so just keep on doing that. And then also, you know, being true to yourself and doing it for the love. And if you're going to do it, you know, set the bar high and go for it, you know, and also if it's not working and it's something that you really love and you're like, God, like this is so frustrating because I love this more than anything, but I can't seem to get to this place that I need to be. You know, there's always another way to feel that thing that you love. And you know, if you love music and for some reason it's like, I'm just not really getting many gigs and I don't see how I could have a career as a performer, then it's like, well, write music. And if you write good music, and if that's something you're great at, you can sell to the people that perform it. Because there's so many performers that are terrible composers, and they have composers, and you know,
I
there's
feel like you're calling me out on that one.
but there's all these ways to fulfill your dreams, and sometimes, you know, something that might feel like it's a dead end could be an opportunity to turn around and see what's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, and so that I think is, you know, going for it, use these years to put all the time in, because they start disappearing. The older you get, the time, where does the time go, you know, to do all the things on the list and to even finish the projects that I've started. You know, it's just you know, use that time now, and yeah. Looking forward to hearing all the great music.
Oh boy.
Thanks for having me, Justin. It's been a pleasure.
It's been wonderful having you. I've been so excited and nervous this whole week, and then as soon as we got in, you were better than I thought you would be. I'm just saying.
Next week on the show, host Nadia Johnson sits down with Kirk Franklin, an iconic gospel artist. She asks him about the impact he hopes to make with his music and what advice he'd give to the younger generation of musicians. We'll see you there.
Blank Note is a production of the Lewis Prize for Music and Save the Music Foundation.
This episode was produced by Terrence Harris, Nadia Johnson, me, Justin Littleton, and Carrie Ann Thomas.
Special thanks to the team, Kenneth Courtney, Zach Flores, Shanika John Jordan, and DeLuke Smith.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
We got to give a 3, 2, 1 for that. Thanks for listening.
Literally.